A Swedish fighter sits on a frozen highway, engine running, ground crew moving around it like a pit crew in winter camouflage. No giant airbase, no perfect runway, no hangar full of specialist equipment. Just a road, a fuel truck, a few mechanics, and a jet designed for the nightmare Sweden expected to face for decades. Russian missiles smashing the airfields before the first wave of aircraft could even take off. That jet is the Saab JAS 39 Gripen. Small, sharp, cheap to operate, built for dispersed war, and armed with some of the best European missiles in the sky. So why does almost no NATO country buy it? The answer is not that the Gripen is bad. That is the lazy explanation. The real problem is one detail. NATO does not buy fighter jets only as aircraft. NATO countries buy political access, weapons pipelines, software ecosystems, nuclear roles, training networks, industrial favors, and wartime guarantees. And in that game, the Gripen keeps walking into the room as a brilliant fighter jet, while the F-35 walks in as an entire alliance plan with wings. That is the brutal difference. The Gripen was born from Sweden's Cold War fear. Look at the map. Sweden sits across the Baltic from Russia, with long coastlines, forests, islands, snow-covered roads, and a strategic problem that never went away. If Moscow ever attacked, Sweden could not assume its big air bases would survive. Soviet missiles, special forces, and bombers would target runways, fuel depots, radar sites, and command centers in the opening hours. So Sweden designed an air force that could scatter. Gripen pilots could fly from ordinary roads. Small teams could refuel and rearm the aircraft in minutes. The jet could use relatively simple support equipment. It did not need the massive base infrastructure that many larger fighters depend on. Sweden wanted a fighter that could disappear into the landscape, strike, land somewhere unexpected, and fly again before the enemy finished updating the map. That design philosophy still matters. In Ukraine, Russia's invasion has shown what happens when missiles and drones turn fixed bases into obvious targets. Aircraft that need huge runways, exposed shelters, and long maintenance chains become harder to protect. A jet that can operate from dispersed sites has real value. It gives commanders more places to hide, more ways to survive, and more headaches for enemy planners. That is why the Gripen has so many fans among defense analysts. It looks like a jet built for the war Europe now fears. It carries modern weapons. It can fire the Meteor Beyond Visual Range missile, one of Europe's most dangerous air-to-air weapons. Saab says Gripen C/D was designed to be fully NATO interoperable, including Link 16, the standard tactical data link used across Allied air operations. Czech and Hungarian Gripens have also flown NATO air policing and preparedness missions, which proves the aircraft can operate inside the alliance system. Gripen E goes further. It has a stronger engine, more fuel, better sensors, electronic warfare upgrades, and a design built around fast software adaptation. Saab markets it as an interoperable fighter with common communication systems and network data links, not as some isolated Swedish oddity. So the obvious question returns. If Gripen is capable, efficient, NATO-compatible, and built for the kind of dispersed war Europe now talks about, why are NATO buyers still lining up for American jets? First, we need to correct the myth. NATO countries have bought the Gripen. Hungary operates Gripen C/D fighters. Its first lease deal was signed in 2003 for 14 aircraft, and Hungary later expanded the fleet. In February 2024, Hungary and Sweden signed a contract for 4 more Gripen C fighters, scheduled for delivery in 2026. The Czech Republic also operates Gripen C/D fighters. In 2025, Prague approved an extension of its Gripen lease until 2035, keeping 12 aircraft in service while it waits for the F-35. So the real question is narrower and more interesting. Why has the Gripen failed to become the standard fighter for NATO's smaller and middle powers? Because when most NATO capitals choose a fighter, they do not start with a clean sheet of paper. They start with Washington. Zoom in on a defense ministry in Eastern Europe. The old Soviet MiG fleet is aging out. Spare parts are unreliable. Russian technical support has become politically impossible. Pilots need to shift into NATO procedures. The government needs quick credibility with allies. The Air Force needs weapons, simulators, training, ground equipment, maintenance contracts, and air policing support. Then the Americans arrive with the F-16 or F-35 package. The pitch is not subtle. Buy this jet and you plug into the biggest military ecosystem on Earth. You train with the US Air Force, you get access to American weapons, you join a huge sustainment network. Your pilots speak the same operational language as the alliance's dominant air power. Your politicians get a stronger relationship with Washington. That matters. A fighter aircraft is not just metal. It is a diplomatic handshake that burns fuel. Slovakia chose the F-16 Block 70 over the Gripen in 2018 to replace its MiG-29s. Reuters reported in 2024 that Slovakia received the first 2 of 14 new F-16 under a deal worth about $1.6 billion, with the aircraft meant to replace Russian-made MiGs and strengthen NATO's eastern flank. Bulgaria followed a similar road. It selected new F-16 Block 70 fighters to replace Soviet-era MiG-29s, and AP reported that Bulgaria received the first of 16 new F-16s in April 2025. After buying an initial batch in 2019 and a second batch in 2022. For countries like Slovakia and Bulgaria, the F-16 was not only an aircraft choice, it was a strategic alignment choice. And that is where Gripen runs into the wall. Saab can offer lower operating costs, high availability, road-based operations, technology transfer, and a fighter that makes sense for smaller air forces. But Saab cannot offer the same political gravity as the United States. When a small NATO country buys American, it buys a louder seat at the table with the alliance's most powerful member. That may sound cynical, because it is. Defense procurement is not a purity contest. It is politics wearing a flight helmet. Then came the F-35. The F-16 already made life hard for Gripen. The F-35 changed the game. The F-35 is expensive, complex, and controversial. It has faced sustainment problems, and Reuters reported in 2025 that US F-35s had an average flight availability of only 50% in 2024, below the Pentagon's minimum requirement. That should have opened space for Gripen. Instead, the F-35 kept winning. Why? Because the F-35 is not sold mainly as a dogfighter. It is sold as a networked stealth system. It can gather information, share data, penetrate defended airspace, and operate as part of a larger kill chain. For NATO planners staring at Russian S-400 batteries, long-range missiles, electronic warfare, and layered air defenses, stealth looks less like a luxury and more like insurance. Finland's decision shows the problem clearly. Before joining NATO, Finland ran one of the toughest fighter competitions in Europe. The Gripen E competed, so did the F-35. In December 2021, the Finnish Air Force announced that the F-35 had met Finland's security of supply, industrial participation, and affordability requirements, then scored highest in military capability, operational effectiveness, and future growth potential. That sentence hurt Saab more than any internet argument ever could. Finland did not reject Gripen because Finnish officers forgot geography. Finland understands dispersed operations, Russian pressure, winter warfare, and national survival better than almost anyone in Europe. Finland looked at the Gripen and still chose the F-35. That tells you something. For Finland, the F-35 offered the better total warfighting system, better sensors, better survivability in contested airspace, better long-term growth inside the American-led ecosystem. Gripen's operating logic made sense, but the F-35's information advantage mattered more. Then, the Czech Republic made the same turn. Prague had experience with the Gripen. Czech pilots knew the jet. The Air Force had operated it for years. Yet, the Czech government signed a deal with the United States to acquire 24 F-35s, with AP reporting the purchase at about 150 billion Czech koruna, or $6.6 billion, and first deliveries expected in 2031. The Czech Republic is keeping Gripens until the F-35 arrives. That is the awkward truth for Saab. Gripen is good enough to protect the airspace today, but when Prague thinks about the next 30 years, it wants the 5th generation club. This is the one detail in action. The Gripen is judged as a fighter, the F-35 is judged as a system, and NATO countries increasingly want the system. Look at the map of Europe's F-35 buyers: Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Poland, Finland, Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, the Czech Republic, Romania, Greece. Several of these countries do not have identical geography, budgets, or threat models, but they share one assumption. Future air combat will reward stealth, sensor fusion, shared data, and integration with US-led command networks. Once enough allies buy the same aircraft, the decision starts feeding itself. Pilots train together, spare parts move through shared channels, maintenance depots grow around the fleet, weapons integration follows the largest customer base, exercises get designed around the jet, tactics mature across multiple air forces. At that point, buying something else means explaining why your country wants to stand outside the mainstream. Gripen can connect to NATO, The F-35 increasingly is the NATO stream. That does not mean every F-35 decision is brilliant. It means procurement officers are risk managers. Nobody gets fired in a NATO capital for choosing the jet that half the alliance already bought. Choosing Gripen requires more confidence, more political explanation, and more willingness to be different. Defense ministries hate being different when the bill runs into billions. Then there is the nuclear issue. Some NATO countries participate in the alliance's nuclear mission. For them, the fighter decision can involve more than conventional air combat. The F-35A has become central to NATO's dual-capable aircraft planning. In 2025, the UK government announced it would purchase 12 F-35A fighters and join NATO's dual-capable aircraft nuclear mission, stating that the aircraft can carry both nuclear and conventional weapons. Gripen does not occupy that role. For countries tied to NATO nuclear sharing, or countries that want maximum alignment with that mission, the F-35A has a strategic function Gripen cannot match. You can argue about whether that mission is wise. You cannot argue that it changes procurement politics. Now add Sweden's old position. Until March 7, 2024, Sweden was not a NATO member. NATO confirms Sweden joined the alliance on that date, becoming its 32nd member. Before that, buying Gripen meant buying a fighter from a highly capable partner, but not from an ally bound by Article 5. Sweden cooperated closely with NATO for years, but in crisis politics, formal membership matters. Governments ask ugly questions. If war breaks out, who controls spare parts? What happens if Sweden faces pressure? What if Swedish domestic politics shift? What if export rules change? Those concerns may not have been fair to Sweden, but defense procurement punishes uncertainty. Now that Sweden is inside NATO, this argument weakens. Saab can say the Gripen is not just NATO compatible, it is a NATO aircraft from a NATO country. That could help, but timing matters. Many European decisions already happened before Sweden joined. Once a country signs for F-35s or F-16, it locks in decades of training, infrastructure, weapons, and budget planning. You do not reverse that because Sweden's flag finally went up in Brussels. There is also a production scale problem. The Gripen is a small production fighter from a small country. That is not an insult, it is the source of many of its strengths. Saab can move fast, Sweden can design around national needs. The aircraft avoids some of the bloat that comes with giant programs. But small scale hurts in export competitions. The F-35 program has enormous industrial depth. The F-16 has decades of global use. American aircraft come with huge user communities, upgrade paths, weapons catalogs, and political muscle. Saab must convince each customer that Sweden can support the fleet through crises, upgrades, wartime attrition, and industrial shocks. That is a hard sell when everyone in the room remembers that fighter fleets live for 40 years. A country buying Gripen does not only ask, can this jet fly well? It asks, can Saab keep this aircraft modern when the threat changes 5 times? Can Sweden scale weapons and spares during a European war? Can we get replacements quickly if we lose aircraft? Can we integrate every weapon we need without waiting behind larger customers? Saab has answers. Some are strong, but the questions never go away. Still, the Gripen has not failed globally. Brazil bought the Gripen E/F and became a major industrial partner. Saab says Brazil's 2014 contract covers 36 aircraft, including 28 Gripen E and 8 Gripen F, with deliveries beginning in 2020. Saab also announced in 2025 that Colombia ordered 17 Gripen E/F fighters, with deliveries planned from 2026 to 2032. That matters because Brazil and Colombia show what Gripen can offer outside the American-dominated NATO procurement machine. Technology transfer, local industry, sovereignty, lower operating costs, flexible basing, a modern fighter without joining the F-35 club. For countries that want more control, Gripen looks attractive. For NATO countries that want maximum integration, F-35 looks safer. And that brings us to Ukraine. Reuters reported in June 2026 that Ukraine is set to acquire 20 Gripen E fighters from Sweden, with additional older aircraft offered as a gift, as part of a wider arrangement that could expand far beyond the first batch. Reuters also noted the Gripen's ability to operate from short, makeshift runways, its minimal maintenance demands, and its compatibility with a wide range of NATO munitions. Ukraine is the battlefield that could change the Gripen's reputation. If Gripen performs well against Russian missiles, drones, electronic warfare, and air defenses, Saab gains something no marketing brochure can buy: combat credibility in the exact war European air forces fear. A Gripen surviving from road bases in Ukraine would speak louder than any trade show model under perfect lighting. But Ukraine also exposes the central challenge. Jets do not fight alone. Ukraine needs pilots, ground crews, spares, weapons, secure communications, shelters, fuel systems, mission planning, and air defense coordination. A fighter that looks simple compared with its rivals still creates a huge support chain. Modern air combat is not a knight with wings. It is a factory, a classroom, a fuel convoy, a satellite link, and a maintenance crew trying to sleep beside a runway that may not exist tomorrow. Gripen's strongest argument is that it reduces some of that burden. It does not erase it. So where does this leave NATO? The Gripen is not unwanted because it is weak. It is unwanted because it solves a slightly different problem than the one most NATO governments are buying for. Sweden built Gripen for national resilience. Hide the aircraft, keep it flying, use small teams, survive the first strike, fight from roads, forests, and improvised sites, make the enemy hunt ghosts. NATO buyers increasingly buy fighters for coalition dominance, share data, penetrate defended airspace, fit into American command networks, use the same weapons and tactics as larger allies, reduce political risk by joining the biggest club. Both logics make sense, but they reward different aircraft. Gripen is the fighter you want when your country fears losing its airbases. F-35 is the fighter you want when your country fears being left outside the main allied kill chain. That is the detail, not speed, not range, not one radar, not one missile, not even price. The detail is ecosystem. Gripen gives a country a smart fighter. The F-35 gives a country a place inside the dominant NATO air combat architecture. And in Europe, architecture beats elegance. Still, this story is not finished. Russia's war has made every old assumption feel less safe. Airbases are vulnerable, missile stocks run low, industrial capacity matters again. Governments now ask whether a small number of exquisite jets can survive a long war of drones, cruise missiles, decoys, and damaged runways. Suddenly, Gripen's ugly little Swedish habit of landing on roads looks less like Cold War paranoia and more like common sense. Canada has already shown renewed interest in alternatives as Arctic security and political concerns shift. Sweden's NATO membership removes one old objection. Ukraine may give Gripen the combat record it always lacked. Saab's recent sales to Colombia and continued work with Brazil show the production line still has life. But NATO procurement moves slowly. Once air forces commit to a fleet, they build doctrine, bases, simulators, and careers around it. A fighter jet purchase is a marriage with missiles. Divorce is expensive. So the Gripen remains the strange case of a jet that many analysts admire, many pilots respect, and many governments still do not choose. It is not too small to matter. It is too independent to fit the easy answer. And that may be the most Swedish thing about it. A fighter designed to survive alone in a forest now has to compete in an alliance where nobody wants to fight alone at all.